The cardboard box trembled slightly in Aarav Malik's hands, not because it was heavy, but because everything inside it was his life, neatly packed into a space that felt far too small for all the years he had quietly given away. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He didn't even look back as the glass doors of the office closed behind him with a soft, indifferent click. For everyone else, it was just another employee leaving. But for Aarav, it felt like the world had decided, without warning, that he no longer mattered. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them the most. The sun outside was bright, almost unfairly cheerful for a day like this. It was late morning, and the city moved on as if nothing had happened. Cars honked, people laughed, coffee shops buzzed with life, but Aarav stood still for a moment on the sidewalk, holding that box like it was the last piece of stability he had left. Inside the box, tucked between files and a worn notebook, sat a small cactus in a white ceramic pot. It was the only thing that looked alive. He had bought it years ago when he first joined the company, back when hope still felt natural instead of forced. It had survived everything, long hours, forgotten waterings, and silent nights at his desk. In a way, it reminded him of himself. Aarav had never been the loudest person in the room. He wasn't the one cracking jokes in meetings or competing for attention. He was the one who stayed late without being asked, who fixed problems before they became crises, who carried responsibilities without complaint. People often overlooked him because he didn't demand to be seen. But what no one in that office truly understood was that Aarav's quietness wasn't weakness, it was survival. 3 years earlier, his life had changed in a single night. His wife, Meher, had passed away suddenly due to a medical complication no one had anticipated. One moment, she had been laughing at dinner, the next, she was gone. The shock had left Aarav hollow, standing alone in a world that suddenly felt too big and too empty. But he didn't have the luxury to fall apart. Because there was 6-year-old Isha. Isha had her mother's eyes, wide, curious, and filled with questions that Aarav often struggled to answer. She didn't fully understand death, but she understood absence. She understood that her mother no longer tucked her into bed or braided her hair in the mornings. And slowly, Aarav learned to become both parents, even when he barely knew how to be one. His morning started before sunrise. He would prepare breakfast, pack Isha's lunch, help her with homework, and drop her at school before rushing to work. Evenings were a blur of cooking, cleaning, and trying to be emotionally present for a child who needed more than he sometimes had to give. Yet, despite everything, he never complained. At work, his performance remained steady. Reliable. Consistent. Invisible. Until the day everything changed. The company had recently undergone restructuring. New management had taken over, bringing with it sharper targets, stricter policies, and an unforgiving focus on efficiency. Names were reviewed, roles were evaluated, and decisions were made, not based on stories, but on numbers. Aarav's name had been on that list. Underperforming in team engagement, the report said. Lacks leadership presence. Minimal contribution to company culture. No one had asked about the nights he worked from home after putting his daughter to sleep. No one had noticed the projects he quietly salvaged behind the scenes. No one had considered that his silence was not disinterest, but exhaustion. And so, without a second thought, they let him go. The HR manager had spoken politely, almost mechanically, as if reading from a script. Aarav had nodded, signed the papers, and left. Now, standing outside, reality began to settle in. Rent was due in 2 weeks. School fees were pending. Savings were thin. And most importantly, there was Isha, waiting at home, trusting him to keep everything together. He took a deep breath, adjusted his grip on the box, and began walking. That evening, Aarav didn't tell Isha the truth. He smiled, helped her with her homework, and listened as she excitedly talked about a drawing she had made in school. She showed him a picture of their small family, just the two of them, standing under a bright sun. Above them, she had written in uneven handwriting, "My papa is my hero." Aarav felt something break inside him, but he didn't let it show. Instead, he hugged her tightly and whispered that everything was going to be okay. But that night, after Isha had fallen asleep, Aarav sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at unpaid bills and job applications. The silence was heavier than ever. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel fear. Days turned into weeks. Rejections came quickly, often without explanation. Some companies said he lacked recent leadership exposure. Others simply didn't respond. Each passing day chipped away at his confidence, but he refused to give up. Because giving up was not an option when someone depended on you. Meanwhile, back at the company, something unexpected was unfolding. The CEO, Rehan Khurana, had recently returned from an extended international assignment. Unlike the new management team, Rehan believed in understanding the people behind the numbers. As he reviewed recent decisions, one file caught his attention. Aarav Malik. There was nothing remarkable at first glance. No awards, no promotions, no flashy achievements. Just years of steady work. But something about the abrupt termination didn't sit right with him. He dug deeper. What he found surprised him. Emails showing Aarav stepping in to resolve critical issues late at night. Reports quietly corrected before reaching clients. Projects stabilized without recognition. And then there were messages from junior employees, thanking him for helping them without ever taking credit. Rehan frowned. This wasn't underperformance. This was invisible dedication. But that wasn't the hidden secret. The real discovery came when Rehan noticed a series of declined invitations, team dinners, late-night meetings, weekend events. At first, it seemed like disengagement. Until he saw one attachment. A scanned document, accidentally uploaded with a reimbursement form. It was a medical report. Not for Aarav, but for his daughter. Chronic respiratory condition. Frequent hospital visits. Ongoing treatment. Rehan leaned back in his chair, the weight of realization settling in. Aarav hadn't been disengaged. He had been fighting a battle no one knew about. Suddenly, everything made sense, the quietness, the limited availability, the lack of presence. It wasn't disinterest. It was sacrifice. And the company had punished him for it. Rehan felt something rare in the corporate world, guilt. The next morning, he made a decision. Meanwhile, Aarav was sitting in a crowded hospital waiting area, holding Isha's hand as she coughed softly beside him. The doctor had recommended another round of tests, and Aarav was trying to calculate how he would afford them. His phone rang. He almost ignored it, assuming it was another rejection. But something made him answer. The voice on the other end was calm, respectful, and unexpected. It was Rehan Khurana. At first, Aarav thought there had been a mistake. CEOs didn't call people like him. But as Rehan spoke, explaining what he had discovered and apologizing, not as a formality, but with genuine sincerity, Aarav felt a mix of disbelief and emotion. For the first time, someone had seen him. Not just his work, but his struggle. Rehan offered him his job back, but not the same role. A better one. Flexible hours. Remote options. Full medical support for his daughter. And most importantly, recognition for the work he had always done in silence. Aarav didn't respond immediately. Not because he wasn't grateful, but because he needed a moment to process something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Weeks later, Aarav walked through the same office doors again, but this time, everything felt different. People noticed him. Respected him. Listened to him. And slowly, he began to find his voice, not loud, not forced, but steady and confident. At home, life began to change too. Isha's treatment improved. Her laughter returned more often. And Aarav, for the first time since losing Meher, felt like he wasn't just surviving, he was rebuilding. The small cactus still sat on his desk. Stronger. Alive. Unbroken. Just like him. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Your engagement helps spread stories that remind us what truly matters in life. And before we end, here's a special request. Comment below with one word, kindness, if you believe the world needs more understanding and compassion. Because sometimes, the quietest people are carrying the heaviest burdens, and all it takes is one person to finally see them. And when that happens, everything can change.